Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. This powerful and somehow terrifying line led to the banning of 1984 in some countries for being seen as pro-communism and in others for being anti-communism. Written in 1949 by Orwell, who fought firsthand in the Spanish Civil War, wove part of his experiences into his writings, particularly reflecting the political outrage between the Spanish government and the Communist Party. The book was intentionally written to expose the secretive politics played by those in higher power during his time, especially during and after World War II. But 1984 isn't just about politics. It's also about understanding the human psyche, how hopelessness, powerlessness, love, and hate shape our lives. These are the forces that influence so many of us, making it a profoundly human story. Orwell often said that he wanted to turn political writings into art, and he certainly achieved that with 1984. In this video, I'll talk about the major factors considered in 1984 to divide people into two groups, the powerful and the powerless. I'll also explore how ordinary, good people become powerless. But first, let's take a look at what led George Orwell to write this masterpiece. Born Eric Blair in 1903 in India, Orwell's early life provided a unique vantage point on British imperialism. His father served the British Empire, and Orwell himself followed suit, working as a policeman in Burma in 1922. However, the job left him deeply dissatisfied. In his essay, Shooting an Elephant, 1936, Orwell reflected on how his role exposed him to the dirty work of empire at close quarters, a realization that instilled in him a lifelong hatred of imperialism. By 1927, Orwell left his position in the imperial service, unable to reconcile himself with the oppressive machinery of the empire. He later joined a militia during the Spanish Civil War, driven by a strong conviction to fight fascism. When asked why he joined, he candidly replied, "If you had asked me why I joined the militia, I should have answered to fight against fascists. And if you had asked me what I was fighting for, I should have answered common decency." It was during his time in Spain that Orwell's perspective on truth and propaganda began to solidify. He narrowly survived being shot in the neck by a sniper, but what truly changed him was witnessing how objective truth was systematically erased. As he wrote, "Early in life, I had noticed that no event is ever reported correctly in a newspaper. Nothing was related to facts. I saw great battles reported where there had been no fighting and complete silence where hundreds of men have been killed. History is being molded." His experiences during the Spanish Civil War, along with his observation of how revolutionary ideals were betrayed by various factions, deepened his skepticism of totalitarianism. These insights were central to 1984, where Orwell introduced the totalitarian state of Oceania, ruled by Big Brother, which controlled not just politics and government, but almost every aspect of life. The question arises, how? I'll discuss that now. They fear love because it creates a world they cannot control. Love has always been a central part of the human experience. People have done both wonderful and terrible things out of love. Harriet Tubman escaped slavery and returned multiple times to rescue her family and others, driven by love. In Stalinist Russia, parents secretly passed down their values and protected their children from state interference out of love. In Auschwitz, prisoners shared food and protected each other from punishment, all because of love. In 1984, the party, with Big Brother at its helm, sought to eradicate passionate love and suppress any human connections that could challenge its authority. Big Brother demanded absolute loyalty, and any strong emotional bonds, whether romantic or familial, were seen as threats to the regime's control. Love, as a deeply personal and uncontrollable force, posed a danger to the party's strict grip on its citizens. To ensure complete submission, the party systematically destroyed the concept of love, turning it into a mechanical, utilitarian act devoid of passion or personal choice. Marriage in Oceania was not a union based on mutual affection, but was strictly regulated by the Ministry of Love. Love marriages were forbidden, and partnerships were assigned by the party to ensure no compatibility or attraction between spouses. The Ministry of Love brainwashed citizens, ensuring that even the faintest spark of passion was extinguished. Procreation was seen as a mere formality, a duty to be fulfilled for the state, stripped of intimacy or personal pleasure. The Anti-Sex League promoted celibacy and the complete suppression of sexual urges. Any form of desire or personal connection was redirected into fervent devotion for Big Brother. Winston and Julia's relationship was a quiet act of rebellion against this oppressive system. Despite the party's efforts, they found solace in each other, united by their shared hatred for Big Brother and the world he represented. Their love was not just romantic, it was a declaration of their humanity in the face of dehumanizing oppression. However, the party was always watching, and their affair was doomed from the start. Winston and Julia's downfall was orchestrated by O'Brien and the shopkeeper, both loyal servants of the party, who lured them into a trap. Winston, emboldened by his relationship with Julia, began to write in his diary about his dissatisfaction with the party, incriminating himself further. O'Brien and the shopkeeper took advantage of their rebellion, leading them to believe they could trust them. When the couple was finally arrested, their love was tested to its limits. They were taken to the Ministry of Love, where O'Brien subjected them to brutal torture designed to break their bodies and their spirits. The party's methods were precise and unrelenting, exploiting every fear and weakness until Winston and Julia's bond was shattered. Under the strain of unimaginable pain and psychological manipulation, both betrayed each other. Winston, once desperate to protect Julia, ultimately begged her to take his place when faced with his deepest fear. Julia, in turn, abandoned her loyalty to Winston. This moment marked the party's victory. O'Brien knew that the destruction of their love signified their complete submission. When passion and loyalty to another person were replaced by fear and self-preservation, the party's control was absolute. With their love extinguished, Winston and Julia were deemed safe to return to society, now devoid of any threat to Big Brother. This brings to mind Niccolò Machiavelli's famous book, The Prince, where he argued that fear should be prioritized over love if a state wants to maintain control over everyone forever. The party's strategy went beyond just romantic relationships. Children were indoctrinated from an early age to monitor their parents and report any suspicious behavior. This created an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust within families, ensuring no one could form alliances that might undermine the party's authority. The erosion of trust between parents and children was another layer of control, redirecting loyalty and love exclusively toward Big Brother. The eradication of love and intimacy served a dual purpose. By dismantling personal connections, the party eliminated any competing loyalties. At the same time, it channeled the resulting void into obsessive adoration for Big Brother. Hate for others was seamlessly transformed into love for the regime, creating a population emotionally dependent on and utterly subservient to the party. This is also why Big Brother maintained a Ministry of Peace, whose primary goal was to perpetuate a state of war. The constant shortages of food, economic struggles, and other hardships kept the lower class dependent on Big Brother, ensuring their loyalty. These tactics weren't the only ones used by Big Brother in Oceania, and I'll discuss more of them now. Evil consists in intentionally behaving in ways that harm, abuse, demean, dehumanize, or destroy innocent others, or using one's authority and systemic power to encourage or permit others to do so on your behalf. In short, it is knowing better, but doing worse. Philip Zimbardo. In Oceania, society was divided into three classes. The inner party, the elite ruling class, held complete power and privileges, leading the party's control. The outer party, the middle class, was loyal to the inner party, but oppressed and closely monitored, surveilled by cameras and other means. The majority of the population, the proles, were the working class, largely ignored by the party, living in poverty and ignorance, but considered harmless. Winston was a minor member of the outer party, working in the Ministry of Truth, where his job was to alter records and change history to fit the party's narrative, biased toward Big Brother. When Winston was caught having a passionate affair with Julia, he was taken prisoner by O'Brien, as mentioned earlier. O'Brien tortured him relentlessly, but for one key reason: to erase Winston's memories of the past. As modern psychology suggests, our memories are fundamental to shaping our present identity, and O'Brien targeted this vulnerability. He wanted Winston to forget the very essence of his soul, the passion and energy that made him who he was, so that he could no longer oppose Big Brother. O'Brien subjected Winston to a horrifying form of torture, locking him in a room with rats that were poised to gnaw at his face. The aim was to make Winston forget everything, even his life's mission. In the final moments of his imprisonment, Winston's memories began to blur. He knew his past, but no longer cared about it at all. It was as if his soul had been crushed. He was transformed from a member of the outer party into a prole, a harmless entity in the eyes of Big Brother. One thing that came to mind while writing this part of the video was Philip Zimbardo's famous experiment on how prisons affect people's behavior. Whenever a normal human being is given a number on their jail uniform, they start to forget their true identity. Prisoners are dehumanized to the point that they no longer see themselves as human beings. The rest follows from there. This is precisely what O'Brien did with Winston. He reminded Winston repeatedly that he was saving himself by betraying his love for Julia and portraying Winston as the bad one, simply because he had had a passionate affair. Now, there were other made-up crimes in Oceania that were considered the worst offenses. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth was a revolutionary act. Thoughtcrime, described as the essential crime which contained all others in itself, was the most feared offense, not just for challenging authority, but for challenging the very reality the party imposed. Winston realized the extent of the party's manipulation at the Ministry of Truth. The Ministry of Truth wasn't about truth at all. It was a place where facts were rewritten and past events were erased or distorted, as mentioned earlier. Winston found a photograph that proved 3 men, once executed for treason, were innocent. Yet in a world where truth was manipulated, he understood the terrifying reality. The party controlled not just actions, but memories themselves. And the most dangerous thing a person could do was to challenge this constructed reality, even within their own mind. Thoughtcrime wasn't merely a crime of action, it was a crime of existence. If you entertain the thought that things might be different, that the party might be wrong, or that Big Brother might not have your best interests at heart, then you were already guilty. The party didn't just want control over your body, they wanted control over your mind. If they could control what you thought, they could control everything else. The extent of the party's surveillance was staggering. Everywhere you went, there was a telescreen watching you, tracking your movements, and even your facial expressions. The party didn't need to be physically present to monitor you. They had built a system that ensured everyone was always under scrutiny. The thought police could arrest you for the slightest change in expression, for even an unconscious sign of rebellion. Privacy didn't exist in Oceania. No one could escape the party's all-seeing eye. The party even ensured that the family unit, once a source of love and trust, became another tool for control. Children were taught to spy on their parents, report any suspicious behavior, and even betray their own flesh and blood. Families were destroyed by the party's fear-driven loyalty tests. Parental bonds, once sacred, became secondary to the party's agenda. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of the party's control was the creation of Newspeak, a language designed to limit the very thoughts people could have. By eliminating words that could express dissent, the party prevented people from even thinking about rebellion. Words like freedom or rebellion no longer existed in the lexicon. With each word removed, the range of human thought was narrowed. As Winston struggled to comprehend this, He realized that the party's true power lay not just in what they forced people to do, but in what they prevented people from even being able to think. The party imposed phrases like war is peace and ignorance is strength on its members, especially those in the outer party, to suppress any critical thinking. Through thought crime, surveillance, betrayal, and the destruction of language, the party ensured that no one could escape its control. The very fabric of human life was twisted until nothing remained but conformity. The idea of truth, once a simple human pursuit, became an act of rebellion. And in this world, even the smallest act of rebellion, like thinking for yourself, became the most dangerous thing you could do. Anyway, I would end my video to this definition of power used in a totalitarian state like Big Brother's. The real power is in inflicting pain and inhumanity, in tearing human minds to pieces.